So I want to talk about this, or rather specifically about sexual coercion. So let's go back to the video this comment came from, where I talked about almost half of men admitting that they had used some form of sexual coercion. And a couple of men commented that some of the items on this list, and I'm going to be generous and hope they meant about insisting on it and not the threats of violence, weren't actually that bad. So let's talk about that. Now I will say perhaps we have not always done the best job at teaching about coercion. For my generation, at least in high school, our education on consent consisted only of no means no. And we were enthusiastic with our support of it. If a woman told us no, we would accept that no because we respected women, and we were so proud of ourselves for it. But as I got older and started to go to clubs and pubs, I would see men being told no, and they would say things like, "Oh, come on, don't be so frigid. I thought you were fun. You know you want to." Or they'd say, "Oh, okay, that's fine, but let's have another drink. Make hers a double." It became clear that no often didn't mean no, it meant not right now. And that if you were a real man, your job, much like a used car salesman, was to turn that no into a yes by whatever means possible. And if you were the kind of man who took the first no and accepted it and walked away, well then you weren't a real man. Where's your pride, your ego? You were a sad loser with no gain. And that brings us back to those studies. See, men admitted if they faced no consequences that 14% of them would openly a woman. And those men probably sleep soundly at night because they've already come to terms with the kind of monster that they are. But if you don't use that inflammatory R word, and instead would you force a woman if you didn't face consequences, then that number more than doubles to over 30%, almost a third of all men. And they probably sleep at night because somehow they've justified in their head that forcing someone is different than... So they aren't as bad as those other guys. Which brings us to coercion. Because there's a percentage of men who admit that they had used threats of violence in order to get what they want from a woman. And those men sleep soundly at night because while they might say those things, they would never actually do them, not like those other bad men, which makes them the good guys. And then there's a percentage of men who don't threaten violence, but threaten other things. Threaten to leave the relationship. Threaten to cheat with somebody else if they don't get it. Threaten to tell everybody that you did anyway, so you may as well. Or threaten to hold back that promotion. And those men sleep soundly at night, telling themselves that they're good men, because while they may have threatened those things, they've never threatened to hurt a woman, making them the good guys. Which brings us then to those who use insistence and pressure and do not relent until they turn that no into a yes. And they sleep well at night because they tell themselves, sure, while I may not have relented and exhausted that person until they said yes, it's not like I ever threatened anybody. Those are the bad people. And look, there are a near infinite number of levels to this. And at every level, you will find people who have convinced themselves that they are good people, not because their actions are good, but because they're better than the bad people above them. And the point here is not to say that all people or all men are bad, but that it is easy to convince ourselves that we are good when we decide at which floor the bad people start at, because it will always be a higher floor than us. The ground floor here is equality, treating others with equal dignity and respect. There's no reason anybody should be heading for the stairs, let alone taking the express elevator so that they can equivocate over which kinds of coercion are acceptable. It does not matter which floor you end up on, because every floor is built on a foundation of degradation, dehumanization, and the normalization of sexism and misogyny. And in turn, your behaviors are the foundation for somebody else to build on top of, again and again until they get all the way to the top. To put it another way, it doesn't matter if you think certain types of coercion are acceptable, or whether you think being degrading to women is acceptable, or if it's just a joke, it's just a joke, well, just chill out. Whatever level of degrading others you are comfortable with, all of it supports, enables, and justifies the behavior of everybody else above you, including those who commit the most heinous crimes. And no good person should be comfortable with that.